Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price.
And David, on this week's riff, what are we going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about the bad cold I caught at the Bristol show. So, as I call it, showvid.
Oh, that's very good, actually.
Thank you.
That's very good.
Yes,
I don't think you're the only one. I don't know how I've escaped it. I blame alcohol. I think that I killed as many bugs as I possibly could at the bar.
I think you did,
in the Bristol show. Yeah. So and thanks to everyone who was kind enough to buy me a beer as well to help me.
Which is most of the Bristol show.
Get rid of showvid. Yeah, absolutely.
So alcohol does have a certain kind of disinfectant quality.
I've always gone by that. I've lived my life by that. Absolutely.
Was it Oscar Wilde who said, when taken in sufficient quantities, alcohol produces the effect of drunkenness, I think.
Good old Oscar.
Or
is it Morrissey?
Nothing gets past him. Yeah. So
brilliant.
The other great one was work is the scourge of the drinking classes.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
So, but there was a lot of drinking going on at Bristol, mainly by you.
Thank you.
But I also had a few.
We did actually.
And but I sadly would like to apologise for my voice. Because I'm actually kind of over it, but I'm still kind of a bit,
It sounds deeper than normal. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so apart from showvid,
yes.
What are we going to talk about on our lovely Hi-Fi Riff here?
Yeah. So today,
look at this.
I'm going to talk about this.
This is very special.
Yes.
Well, I think this is very special.
Yeah.
This is a retro riff. We haven't done a retro riff in ages, for a start.
Right.
Which is really cool.
It's not like us, is it?
No, it's not like us. We love our retro.
Yeah.
And I particularly love this.
Yes.
Because this is the original.
Yeah, I'll just take the BNC adapter off.
Yeah, this is the original Chord DAC, isn't it?
It is. DAC64.
DAC64.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Can I just ask, what kind of era are we talking about here? What year was this?
So this would be roughly 2001, 2002.
Okay. And look, I'm going to be controversial here, but DACs were, and in fact, DAC CD players, etc., were not really my cup of tea then. They found them a bit, there weren't many I liked, shall we say.
Yep.
There weren't many I liked.
Me too.
Interesting.
Despite having to review loads of them.
Yeah. I think it would be fair to say there's probably been one or two over time which we've both liked, and they've probably been similar ones. And I think we've documented them before. CDPX77 Sony being a classic example.
Don't tell the viewers, Mike.
Don't tell the viewers. We haven't done a retro riff on that deliberately, have we? Just in case. If people start buying them and push the price up, because I still don't have one.
No,
I know you do.
It's not like you not to have anything that's good, is it? You've got everything that's good.
It's something I covet, definitely, without a doubt. But this is glorious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really stupid question, but when this came out in 2001, round about that time, I mean, it looks pretty futuristic now.
Yeah.
It must have been a sort of, oh my God, it's a spaceship has landed.
Yes.
Sort of effect with the sort of looking glass on the top, and it almost feels like it's sort of made from one sort of solid billet of aluminium, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it almost is.
It almost is, yeah.
It looks something like I was going to say it looks like a prop from Blake 7.
It really does.
But actually, it's much better made than that.
It doesn't wobble when you push it. Yeah.
Yes, it's unlike the BBC, props department. This thing. I think it's an absolute.
I think it's
monster.
more futuristic than that.
It is.
I really do. I just think it's amazing. When this came out and people must have looked at it for the first time, they must have just gone, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah.
But the reviews at the time, I remember reading, were stonking.
Yeah.
Weren't they? Everyone loved it. Nobody who listened to it didn't like it.
Absolutely.
It was just a belting. What I want to say was in past tense. That's not fair, is it? It's a belting DAC.
Yes.
In fact, we've just been giving it a blast, and I'm still massively impressed.
Absolutely.
Hugely impressed.
Yeah. Well, it was. I think this is. I would put this up in the realms of the Quad ESL 57, and the sort of the NAD 3020 is kind of hallmark of hi-fi, as it were.
Yes.
It was one of those products that basically sets the tone for everything that comes after it in terms of either performance or design or value or one way or the other. It was Chord Electronics' first collaboration with Rob Watts, who was famous for working for Deltec Precision Audio.
Yes. I applied for a job with Deltec.
Did you?
I did.
Well, lucky for them, you didn't get it.
They used to use surface mount technology in their DAC and amplifiers. It looked kind of really weird on the circuit board. It looked like little sort of mouse droppings, kind of almost.
Yes, I'm not sure I would have used that that phrase.
Now that's coming back to me now. I remember he used to work for Deltec. Yes.
Well, so when I just joined Hi-Fi World, it must have been about 93, 94, we had a DAC in that Noel Keywood, who's the publisher editor at that time, always been the publisher, got very excited about. And I think Noel had a very good ear. I think had a very good sense. He liked the good stuff and was rather lacked patience, as it were, for the bad stuff. And we've been using, if I don't mind going off a slight tangent here,
it's Hi-Fi Riff. You do what you want.
We've been using the Pink Triangle Da Capo DAC.
Yes, I remember that.
We had a Cardinal Transport, PT Cardinal Transport and Da Capo DAC. And the Da Capo DAC was really good, actually. It was really, really good, and it's something that we should try and buy on eBay for 10p and get fixed and feature on Riff.
Yes.
But it was a fantastic DAC, especially with they had a plug-in system where you could change the sort of DAC digital filter chip, and there was a Pacific Microsonics digital filter that went in there, and it sounded great. So we already had this great DAC in our Hi-Fi World reference system in the early 90s. And then along came a certain geezer called Rob Watts with a DPA, Deltec Precision Audio Enlightenment DAC. And Noel measured it, and he's going,
Noel measured everything.
Oh, David, this is full of distortion. It's full of distortion, this is going to be absolute rubbish. And to give him his credit, we plugged it in. It sounded great, So Noel was really raving about the DPA Enlightenment, and they did several other little DPA DACs as well, and they're all really good, a bit odd and not made in the best possible way in terms of the build quality, etc. But typical bonkers, British 80s, 90s kind of hi-fi. So the DPA Enlightenment, and then Rob obviously moved on and teamed up with John Franks from Chord, and I've forgotten the story now, but I think there was something along the lines of that they met accidentally. Possibly John went to view Rob Watts' house, or it was the other way around. Rob went to view John's house that he had for sale. It was some really unusual, meeting of sort of random happenstance. And they ended up basically...
And we've benefited ever since.
We have. So they ended up basically working together. And then you had Chord Electronics, who, even back then, were a very young company doing some very good solid-state electronics. And Rob obviously did his thing, which was the Watts Transient Aligned Digital Filter and DAC. Very totally bespoke and done on an FPGA, which is field programmable gate array, for those that just testing UVs. So basically the point is a custom bespoke DAC digital filter rather than the sort of chip that you bought off the shelf back then, which would have been it was been just after, it would no longer be the TDA 1541, but there was all sorts of bitstream Philips DACs around then. I can't remember the exact version that was Flavor of the Month then. So you had a few multi-bit DACs from Burr Brown and so on. You had Philips stuff, but this was completely bespoke. And to my knowledge, the only other company that was doing bespoke DACs was DCS.
Wow.
And they were doing very expensive and back then it would have been, I think, the 950, 951, I've forgotten the name, the exact model number, but that would have been, again, a bespoke DCS design, and that sounded great by the standards of the day. But this was the only other bespoke one that we knew about.
Can I have a look?
Yeah.
Look at this.
And so the DAC64 wasn't just a kind of crazy design, as it were, in terms of the ergonomics. It was very radical inside as well.
Yes. Yeah.
The way I came to it is that I reviewed it, I think, for World, and this would have been around 2002. And I was blown away by how good it sounded.
Yeah.
And I had...
when was the last time you listened to one before? Half an hour ago?
Quite a while ago, yeah.
We were really impressed.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember the sound of it in my head, but, it kind of... When we just listened to it, it just sounded like I remembered it, really.
Yes, yeah.
And we'll go into the sound in a minute. But what I'm trying to say is that it was a significant moment, I think, for Hi-Fi.
Yes.
When this came out.
On a par with a few other real milestone products.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I remember John Atkinson's Stereophile review as well, which was around summer 2002. And he called it Beyond Reproach.
Really?
Which was not something he used to write very often.
No.
But I think we could all hear it, and very interesting product in terms of sound quality.
In James Bond,
yes.
Right at the beginning where on every scene he gets shot and dies, yeah. And then, you see the bullet. It looks like that, doesn't it? It's kind of slightly offset and kind of a bit. You think?
I've never thought of that, but now I'll never unsee that.
Do you think that's where it comes from? It's like the James Bond opening credit.
We need to ask the guy at Chord who did that.
Yes, that's really cool.
I can thank you for that. I can't ever unsee that now. That's really annoying.
So we listened to it. Me for the first time.
Yes.
You for the first time in a while. It shouldn't sound this good. I mean, we've got other Chord products, and we've listened to loads of Chord products, and it shouldn't sound this good. It should have been. This should be obsolete by now, shouldn't it? But it's so not, is it? It still sounds great.
It does,
and I think you nailed it earlier, because David said earlier that it has a stunningly good analog output stage, and I think that really is what makes a massive difference here, doesn't it? It's just superb.
Well, it's got the very first kind of iteration of the what's transient align filter and so on.
Yes.
And so it's much cruder than a modern DAC. And if you look at the latest Chord electronics DACs, I was just checking up on this earlier. So the Mojo 2 that you've got has got 40,960 taps in its digital filter. It's kind of elements, as it were, the sort of computing power, I guess you could call it.
Yes.
And the DAC64 has got 1,024.
Wow. Gosh.
So basically it's a lot less sophisticated than your Mojo 2, which is about that big. It's
a tiny little thing, And dare I say, the analog output stage is probably a mile better.
Absolutely,
And in fact, you had a really cool car analogy with the Jag, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you're saying this is like a sort of supercharged 4-litre Jag from yesteryear.
Yeah, it's like if you think of like the X308 era, 2002 kind of, final steel-bodied kind of XJR kind of thing. And it would have had the 4-litre V8 Jaguar AJ27 in it with a supercharger, and then you compare that to the modern version, like the sort of swoopy modern one with 5-litre, supercharged and
million horsepower,
gazillion horsepower.
Yes,
so basically, the bare bones of it are very similar, but you're just several generations down the road, as it were. With a new one, it'll have a 8-speed auto instead of a 5-speed or whatever.
But it doesn't mean the old one isn't nice to drive still. It goes really fast and does lots of things. And in fact, you know what it's like in some of the older cars, the trim level can be actually nicer. The leather's a bit more supple, and the wood's deeper, and all that stuff. The paintwork's probably more polishable, and so in some ways,
it's kind of got the sort of same core, as it were.
Yes.
But the modern ones have got all lots of clever stuff on, but still the real driving experience is the same.
Yes.
Very similar.
Sure.
And it's the same with this. The listening, it does sound very much like a very good Chord DAC.
It really does. So, and we listened to some different music with it as well. We listened to some of my we listened to KLF. I haven't listened to KLF in forever.
Yep.
Last Train to Trans Central.
Yep.
My gosh, that sounded really good, actually.
So that was released 30 years. When was it? Where are we? 2024. Sorry, it's the cold medicine viewers. But yeah, it was like just over 30 years ago. It's an old track now. It feels like it's kind of still quite new, but
sure.
And that sounded great.
That sounded really good.
So,
and then we had a bit of Technotronic as well.
Yep.
We played a song which I've played 1 billion times, which can sound awful, which was Subdivisions by Rush from Signals, and that sounded amazing. Sounded absolutely amazing.
That's a really difficult song to play well on hi-fi,
really
isn't it?
It really is. This coped so brilliantly, didn't it?
The recording is really dense, and it's kind of almost more nasal than me at the moment.
Yeah.
And yet it just kind of pierced the sort of skin, as it were, and got really into the recording.
It was phenomenal.
You could hear all the different elements of the mix playing on along with each other.
Yes.
Like the kind of glide synths and the amazing drum tracks, and the kind of guitar.
Sometimes it can just be a bit sort of mushy in the background.
Can really sound mushy.
And other times it can be bright and unlistenable.
Yeah.
So actually, well impressed with that. I thought that was really quite stunning.
Yeah.
And nothing but praise for it. I can see why people raved about it.
Yeah.
I really can. I can't believe it's been so long since I managed to hear one at last.
Yeah.
So, but I'm so pleased I did.
Yeah.
Just a class bit of kit, an absolutely class bit of kit. I wonder if there's still see. I've seen a few of these on eBay and so on, but they seem to hold their value really quite well. So
yes. Excuse me. Yes and no. So the downside of this. Well, firstly, Mike, would you like to demonstrate the sockets?
Oh my God, I haven't looked at the socket.
Because this brings me to my next point.
If I hold it there,
I know.
So you can.
Yes. So obviously you've got XLR balanced outs, you've got unbalanced coax there, and you've got one BNC coax digital in there.
Yeah. And
you've got one Toslink, if I can see correctly.
Yes, it is. That's it. Yeah.
And that's it's a digital. But where's the USB?
Yeah, so there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
No, sure.
So that's gonna rule it out for about 95% of DAC buyers.
Yes, probably. Yes. No, fair point.
To me, actually, in a way, that's a good thing.
Okay.
Because if you don't listen to high res, then if you want to buy something that does really well on lower res, so it'll do 24-bit 96, and it does CD quality brilliantly, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. In fact, can I just say that's what we were listening to on Qobuz. So we were just finding CD quality songs, because in Qobuz you can choose the version.
Yeah.
And we didn't choose any of the high-res ones. We just used the standard 44 ones. It sounded great.
Yeah.
Sounded really good.
It really did. So basically, almost as they would say, the audiophile normies would not go for this at all. They'd leave it alone like it didn't exist, because it's got no USB input.
Sure.
But if you're basically disc based, or you're lower res streaming, and you don't use a USB, then it works fine.
No, sure.
Works fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've got some Meridian active speakers from actually older than this.
Yeah.
And that's the same. If you plug in anything other than 44.1, it just refuses to play anything at all. because it just doesn't know what it is. So,
well,
this sounds good on 44.1.
It sounds great on 44.1, and it also does 2496 as well. I think we were just in the process when this came out of DVD audio was popping up.
Okay.
Which was 24.192 max spec on off the in 2-channel without Meridian lossless packing.
Yes.
So it was kind of on the cusp, and so it's not really a 24. It's not a 24.192 as far as I know. Via its, I don't think there's any way you can get that into it. But if you use the lower digital resolutions, it works great. Works just like any other DAC. And it's just a dream with CD. It's a great way of playing CDs back. So
I love the little stickers on the back which tell you what you're flicking onto.
Yes,
with the little sort of
little micro switch.
Little micro switches. Yeah. That's actually the cheapest part of the whole of the setup, isn't it? It's a lovely bit of aluminium, and then you've got a couple of little and a couple of stickers. What's not to like?
It's like they've been down to radio spares for
exactly, and the Allen bolts on the top holding it all together as well. But it's a great bit of kit. I'm so glad you bought it. I'm so glad you brought it over. It's been brilliant, and it's so good to do a riff on this. That's fab. Yeah. So look, we should do a riffometer on it.
Yeah. So firstly, I want to put this in perspective. So I'm not saying it's anywhere near as good as a brand new Chord Dave today.
Okay. Named after you.
Or even thank you guys.
Another digital product named after you.
Yes. When will they stop naming things DACs after me? So, and it's not as good as a Chord TT2 either. But it's kind of there or thereabouts with the sort of more budget DACs. But it's sort of got a beefier kind of analog output stage. It puts out a very solid sound. It's very good.
It does. It puts out a lot of volts as well.
Yeah, I think it's 3 volts. I think instead of 2. So
God,
it's a little bit.
My exposure amps were sort of on 1, and they were it was flying, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think even they were designed for CD, were they, Mike?
No, it doesn't have a CD. CD input. No.
So I'm not saying we're not trying to pretend that it's like the secret best DAC in the world, and you can buy one really cheap, so why bother with new? I'm not trying to do that. Just trying to put it in context, in historical context. It's a great DAC, and it still actually sounds great now.
It sounds really good.
Much better than you might expect. And it's got a more primitive digital filter, but that doesn't stop it from being really musically enjoyable.
Yes.
It's really punchy, it's propulsive, and it paints a really nice sound stage. Everything's in its place. Everything plays on really well.
The program Room 101.
Yeah.
And you put all the junk things in Room 101.
Yeah.
Whatever the opposite to that is.
Yes.
This goes in there, doesn't it?
Yes.
This goes in the sort of the room for
010.
gorgeous Room 010 for gorgeous hi-fi products with the ESL 57s.
Absolutely. The Mike and Dave's Room 010.
I think we need to start something there, don't we? We really do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for that reason, I'm not trying to pretend it's better than the brand new top of the range Chord DAC. But in the great scheme of hi-fi things, I'm going to give it a 10 because I think it's an important and as you say, Mike, it's a absolutely shoe-in for Room 010.
Yeah, and it's an easy 10. It's an easy 10 for me.
It is,
absolutely love it. Love it. What a beautiful bit of kit. So look, thank you again. Really appreciate that. And I'm so glad I've listened to one at last.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming. Yeah. But fab.
Well, it's nice that you can hear products made in 2003, Mike. Hopefully next year you'll hear something made in 2004 or 2005.
Well, I'm sure you've got plenty.
Remind us how old your exposure pre-power is.
Yes, and on that note, thank you so much for watching this episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks a million.
Thank
Bye.
You,
Bye.